Hello there, welcome to part 5, Excel spreadsheets. You should have this spreadsheet open on your computer. If you do not, you need to go open that at this time. And if you haven't completed the previous videos, you'll need to finish those first. This is the 5th video in our Excel unit. And at the bottom of the page, if you've done everything up to this point, you should have 4 tabs: Total Hits, Formula Fun, Batting Average, and Home Run Leaders. And you should currently have Total Hits tab selected on your screen. I'm going to show you today how simple it is to create really nice looking and professional graphs from the data that you put in here, and it's really not much more than selecting a range of cells, making a couple clicks in the right spot, and you can have some pretty cool stuff. Follow along carefully, because if you click like one little thing wrong, it can completely change the appearance of what's happening, which we can undo, but you'll get confused because it'll look different from what you're seeing on the screen. So continue hitting pause as you go through the video and create the document yourself, and hopefully at the end you will have learned some cool stuff. Alright, so what we want to do here is we're going to create a graph, a circle graph, that just represents the total hits of these 5 players. So in other words, it's a pie graph, and based on how many hits each player has, it'll be sorted. The pieces will be different sizes based on this data in column G. So the first thing you'll need to do is select the cells G5 through G9. Do not select that bottom number 798. That's the total hits. So we're gonna show 798 hits in a circle graph, and then we're going to divide it up into those chunks based on what each player did. Now the cool thing about Excel is once you select that range, go over to Eric Hosmer. Now be careful here. You're going to press the Control button before you click. Press Control. Keep your finger on Control. Click and drag. My finger stays on Control. Now let go of everything. It'll say cell A5 up here probably for you, wherever that white rectangle is, but since it's all grayed out there, that's actually the cells that it has selected. Next thing, click over here on the tab that says Insert. Okay, it should have stayed gray there, so you haven't lost the cells that you've selected. If those gray cells go back to white like the other cells, you just need to do it again. Click and drag, click and drag. Hopefully it looks like my screen right now. This area right here, these are all different kinds of graphs that we can make just by simply clicking them. And we're really going to just focus in this class on pie graphs and bar graphs. I don't know if we'll see a line graph. We could make one, but for this particular data, it's not really appropriate. Right now, we just want a pie graph or a circle graph. So if you click on the arrow next to the circle, you're going to see all kinds of choices. And what's cool, you've already see it happening on my screen, just as I hover over each of those choices, it will select, it'll show you the different types of graphs that it can do. And we are just going to start with a very simple 2D pie graph right here for us. Now, if we selected the columns right, like we did, you'll notice down here, puts in the names of the players with the data, and it matches the color right there. One thing that it did not do is change the title of the graph, and that's really easy to change if you just click on it and put your mouse in there. If you don't see the mouse, you just might need to click one more time. We're going to just backspace, and let's change this to total hits. So now we've got a nice title. Any graph in any class should always have a title and an explanation of what the data is, kind of a key of what the data is there. Now, let's click it again and make sure you can, well, let's move it out of the way. You just click and grab it, and it's kind of big, so let's make it a little bit smaller just to try to make it kind of proportionally appropriate to the screen. We could put it down here or over here. I'm going to leave it over here because I think it's more appropriate for, it's just easier to see on your screen, hopefully, for you. Now, here's a couple cool things. As long as it's selected, how do I know if it's selected? Notice the circles that go around the perimeter of the rectangle that contains the graph. If you look in this area up here, you can actually change the style of the graph. Okay, and if you see this little button right here, it's got like a little arrow mark with a line above it, and you click on that. These are all of the options that you can choose to change the look of your graph. And this particular one, style number 11, you can put in the data percentages of hits for each player. I kind of like this gray color right here, but I don't really like the way that it shows the percent numbers. This is one of my favorites as well. So I'm going to go with the dark background here. Now we can do a couple other things. If you want to change the colors of the pie, the pieces of the pie, you can click on colors and you can go down and select a different color. I don't really like that one. I just wanted to show you. I would prefer to make it kind of royal blue colors, and I don't see anything on there that looks great, so I'm just going to go back. Let's take a look at that one. That's kind of nice because it's different, but I think I'm just going to go back to the original one right there. A couple other things that you can do is you can have it put in, if you want the names on the pieces of pie, you can go up there and select it, or if you just want the percentages, that's kind of nice. It's kind of hard to see some of the white font on there. So you can select a style, a layout for your graph. So why don't you go ahead and choose one that you like, and I'll go with layout 6, even though I don't love the white fonts. We will call it good for now. So there, I didn't do anything but a couple click drags, and there I've got a nice looking professional graph for the total number of hits. That's cool. Let's say I wanted to do a different type of graph, so let's leave that on that page, and let's click over here to our batting average tab. And since this is my tab of batting average, well, I think what would be appropriate here would be a bar graph of the batting averages. Now, since I've sorted them from greatest to least, it's going to be a bar graph going downhill, and that's okay. It doesn't really matter. So let's click and drag. Again, you're on the batting average tab right now. Click and drag through the batting average values in column H. Don't go any further than that, and don't select the name batting average there. And then click on Hosmer. Whoops, I messed up. Okay, so if anything weird happens, if you lose it, go back, click and drag. I press the Shift key, not the Control key. When you go to Hosmer, press Control, select, drag. If you don't do that, if you don't select the names, you're going to get a bar graph without their name on it, and going in and changing those names is kind of a pain. So I always try to grab it here. If I do it wrong, I'd rather just delete my graph and do it again. Okay, so go back up to Insert. Insert is where you can find the bar graphs. And bar graphs are this little icon right up here. It's 2 steps above the pie graph. Click on that arrow and you will see all the different bar graphs. The most basic bar graph is right there. I think the 3D graphs are pretty cool, so I'm going to go down to a 3D column graph right there and select that. And there you have a nice graph. It's labeled your axis values over there with their batting averages, and you can see because we had sorted them greatest to least in an earlier video, that's why the largest graph is on the left and it goes downhill. If you don't like that, you could scramble the names in your original data and have the bar graph moving up and down as well. Go up and find a layout that you like. There's all your choices. That's a really interesting one. I don't particularly like it myself. I kind of like this gray one right here, so I'm going to go with this one. I'm going to change my chart title to batting average. And there we have a nice looking batting average. I want to resize it. And oh, that's almost too small. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make it a little more narrow, but I'm going to pull it longer so the bars stand out. So you can do that. You can make it nice and tall if you want the bars to look bigger, which that's kind of cool there. So let me click that. Whoops. Now I just moved something. I'm going to hit Control Z and put it back. I didn't mean to do that. I'm trying to grab it and move it right over here to get a nice fitting batting average graph over there. You know what else we can do while we're here? If you want to, click on column 1. We could do a little bit of formatting, kind of dress up our spreadsheet a little bit. All I did was select row 1, and then I went up here to the paint can and I painted it yellow. We could go up here to the name. On the titles up here, if we want to kind of dress it up a little bit more and maybe select a different color. You want to keep it light so that you can read it, and you can kind of select the totals, and you can do all kinds of things to make your spreadsheet look. Whoops, I don't want to do that. I don't want to change the color of my font. I would rather just put a little background. That's a little dark. If you change color in a cell, keep it light so that it's still easy to read the data. You can do things like that to make your spreadsheet look cool. Batting average is a pretty important statistic, so we could do that and go up to our paint can and again put in just a nice light shade of something to kind of show the important numbers of data that you want people to notice. Okay, I'm going to wrap this video up here in just a minute. I'm going to give you a little assignment right now, so listen carefully. I'm just going to give you a verbal assignment for a couple things for you to add to it. We have review what we have in here. We have a total hits graph. One thing I'd like you to do is do some formatting in this, kind of highlight some of the rows and columns and make it look like we did on batting average. Again, all the data should be readable, so don't do any like dark cells that would lose the ability for someone to read your spreadsheet. But if you want to change some colors, put in some design, that'd be cool. What I'd also like you to do is on the formula fun, would you go over here and type in at bats, and I would like you to create some sort of graph that shows the numbers of at bats of the players, and you can either do a circle graph, a pie graph. If you want to just mess around with some of the other ones that they don't really work as well, a scatter plot graph might actually be fine for that. Some of them don't really work for the data, but if you just want to experiment with the graphs, just create a cool graph of at bats on this tab, and then go to home run tab, which is the fourth tab we created, and then create some kind of graph that shows the home runs along with the players' names. And again, that can be a pie graph or a bar graph or a graph of your choice, and kind of mess around with the formatting of it and also the formatting of the sheet. If you're ahead of schedule, that would be really cool, and I'd love to see that when you have time to show me. So that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something as well.